one. Oh, you know what I want to do, Rabbi? I want to record this. So let me get my recording up. Before anything, because we want to record the whole thing, no?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so let me do something. Give me a second.
Yeah. We'll post this on.
People are listening. I'm here with a very special guest. He's one of our big sponsors from the group. His name is Rabbi Moishe Ben Chaim. And the Chaim stands for life, in case you didn't know. So we're just going to record the whole thing so we can replay it afterwards.
Gotta love that accent.
Hold on a second.
I love the accent. It doesn't even sound phony.
You know what? When I grew up with my very Jewish Holocaust survivor parents, they spoke English something like this. Okay, so it's going to record starting now. It's recording. So I think we're live. Yeah, we've been live actually for a minute and 13 seconds. How's my hair today? Does it look good? I don't know. What do you think? It's all right. The hair looks good. What do you think, Rabbi?
I think you should part it on the other side next week.
Part it on the other side. Okay, I'm wearing a cap because, my kepler gets a little bit cold in the winter time, so I have no roof. Someone is saying shalom, so shalom to you back. Facebook user, I don't know the name, but it doesn't have a picture. So we got here a very special guest tonight. His name is Rabbi Moishe Ben Chaim. He's been advertising with us for a couple of weeks now, and he runs a non-profit organization known as the Jewish Times. And he's a good man. He wants to, bring the authenticity of Judaism to all the Jews and really tell us what it's all about to be a Jew, to be Jewish. And so let's ask Rabbi Moishe, how long have you been running the Jewish Times?
Well, I do it under the Masorah website. And the Masorah website's been around over 25 years.
25 years?
25 years.
All right, that's a long time. And how many users or members have you got, or followers?
The email list is over 13,000 subscribers.
Okay.
And we put out over 620 issues of the Jewish Times since starting, which is a very nice accomplishment.
Okay.
Good readership, and it's something which people really appreciate. I think it's an oasis in a desert of so many unidentifiable forms of Judaism and things that are, people. I see people that come to the site and the questions that come in through emails and the compliments about finding Judaism makes sense to them because
right.
all different forms of it, whether it's Kabbalistic or mystic or Hasidic or Lubavitch, there's so many different forms. Which one is the right
one?
Yeah, and if you look at the lineage, you look at the transmission going back to Moses, that should be what closely mirrors what Moses gave us. That is what I would say is the authentic form, and that's what we have to stick to. Over time, it's become watered down. To Maimonides and later and Sforno, you have all the rabbis are all unanimous. There's no conservative, there's no reform, there's no Hasidic, there's no Kabbalah, mystic. There's no mysticism in the Torah. And what happened was people, just like Maimonides records, the third generation on earth, Adam's grandson, right?
My grandson.
No offense, Adam. Adam's grandson, Enosh. They started star worship. 3 generations into the creation of man started corrupting himself, and his insecurities came out, and they just couldn't deal with an abstract, non-physical God that's not here, not there. He just exists. But people started needing to have a form. That's, their youth. You're so used to parents, and then when you get older, you realize your parents that they aren't that Superman figure that you thought they were. So now you need something to fill that void. So they create Jesus. They create, rebbes that are magical. They create things that are not validated in reality to placate their insecurities. When God is telling you, don't do that. Use your reason, use your mind, and see how the world works. There's natural law, and there's systems of providence. Or a person lives properly. That's what happened, all the stories in the Torah about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all the miracles that God did for righteous people. So you have a way to placate your worries if you follow the system, and also use intelligence. Like Jacob, his brother wanted to kill him. He had 400 men coming towards him. So Jacob prayed to God, but he didn't just rely on his laurels. He also planned militarily, dividing his camp into two, saying if Asaph knocks off one half of the camp, at least the others will get away. And then he also sent a bribe. He worked, psychologically and socially. So he tried all different fronts, and that's what you're supposed to do. So the Torah is replete with a system of how you can live properly and follow what exactly God's will is, and determined by proof, not on blind faith. That's, again, it's a long answer to what you were talking about, but that's the way I started Masorah 5 years ago. I want people to have the way to get back to what is authentic Judaism, to see how it makes sense, to get answers like, why do we keep kosher? You could come up with crazy answers, but if you look in the Torah itself, God wrote the Torah in a way where the words will start jumping out. If you ask the questions, you'll see how God wrote. There's a code. It's an honest to goodness code that all the rabbis wrote about. Maimonides, Rashi, Sforno, Ibn Ezra, and Rashbam, all the greatest minds. And they were amazed by the wisdom that God put in the Torah. The answers are there. It's just that people have made money and fame their goal in life, as opposed to seeing God's brilliance, which is why he gave the Torah. So in a nutshell, that's what I'm trying to make available to people. And that's the thousands of articles on Masorah.org and in the Jewish Times. It's all free. It doesn't cost a penny. There's free books, publishing over the years that people can download the books and go through it on their own time. There's a search feature that people can look for things themselves that are interesting. And if you look at the letters page, you see what people are actually saying. Different people of different religions are seeing that when you present the Torah accurately, it makes sense, and it's beautiful. It's something which you have to take time to look into it, but it's worthwhile.
Can I ask you, let's backtrack a little bit. When did you decide to become a rabbi, and why did you decide to become a rabbi?
I wasn't raised observant, but I did have some yeshiva background for a number of years. And I ended up in Queens, New York, in Far Rockaway to be specific. And I came upon this yeshiva. And Rabbi Israel Chait had started this yeshiva 50 years ago.
How old were you when that happened?
I first came to the yeshiva, I was mid-teens. And I moved into the dorm the summer of 79. I was turning 18.
Okay.
And a friend of mine brought me under his wing. I was 17, he was 19, and he had already been learning there. And he started showing me, Rabbi Chait's teachings, and I just started, this is brilliant. This is amazing. Maybe the whole story of the flood, and why God punished these people, but let these people live, and the concepts of justice. But more in terms of how the Torah is written in such a brilliant fashion, and that the questions lead to beautiful answers. And I became so enamored by this that it was a natural, chain of events that I became observant and stayed learning, and I've still, listened to Rabbi Chait's teachings and share them with people. And a brilliant rabbi. I've never heard someone who has a mind like that. In all of my years of learning, I'm learning like 45 years now, and that feeling of impression, that clarity, and the insights that he's shared decades and decades, it just grew my attachment to it, and I decided I wanted to share that with others. I studied, became a rabbi, taught at all different levels, grade school through college, and decided to put this into a digital form, so this way it could be reaching anybody, anywhere, instantaneously, so that the internet is such a blessing. It's a real blessing.
It's really good.
So I'm using that as a means to make, no impediments, no walls. Everything is free on the site, and I respond to all the questions that come in through the emails. And you can see again, a lot of the articles are based on questions that come in. People have questions, real concerns. Brilliant.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the Torah and the Talmud?
The Torah is what God dictated to Moses on Mount Sinai. So it's God's word. So there's 5 books in the Torah.
And where do there's 613 commandments?
Right, 613 commands. That's all found in the Torah. So Torah
and
is
the Torah. That's a lot of commandments. How many people really follow all those
You really
commandments?
can't follow all of them, because if you're not a Kohen, you can't do some. If you're not a male, you can't do some.
Yeah.
There's many. If you don't live in Israel, you can't do some. So it comes down to, there's not, it's not a toil whatsoever. In your day-to-day life, you have plenty of free time to follow your interests, your activities, besides your prayer times. So it's not really overburdening whatsoever. The truth is, the more you study, the more you want to study, just because the greatest joy that a person has is discovery. Seeing something new that they never, like a child. The child's amazement is something which can be recaptured if a person goes back and pulls themselves out of all their time and money and fame and all the pursuits that, you just don't take with you anyway. Of course, you got to provide for yourself. But what is how did God design a human being to be the happiest? When their mind is engaged and they're pursuing brilliance. There's only so much food you can eat. There's only so much sex you can have. And then after a certain amount of indulging, it becomes painful, because you're not designed. A human being is not designed to be, satisfying lusts 24/7. We're designed with intelligence for a purpose, because that will give us the greatest satisfaction. And Torah trains a person in that. Talmud is what the rabbis wrote as an explanation of the oral law, because there were two laws God gave to Moses. He gave him the written law, the 613 commands, in the form of Genesis through Deuteronomy. And then he also gave him, in the non-written form, he gave an oral law, which we call Mishnah, which is an elaboration on what the Torah contains. So Talmud is what the rabbis' discussions are about that oral law. And again, Torah is God's dictation to Moses of what the words are exactly that are to be in the Bible. The Bible is Torah, synonymous. Those are two synonyms.
How do we have proof that God gave us the Torah? Where's the proof? I mean, I've always questioned that myself.
That's the most important question. It's good you asked it. And I'm glad that other people will be able to hear the answer.
Yeah.
It's the same proof we use for any historical event. And Rabbi Moishe wrote a beautiful essay on this years ago. And the way we can prove something in history is if we can remove any doubt that it's false. If we could say something is not false, it has to be true. There's only two possibilities. Either something is true or something's false. There's no in between. It's like motion. Either something is in motion, I don't care how slow, it's either in motion or it's not. It's stationary. So when you talk about a quality, there's a quality and its opposite. So how can we remove any a point in history? Let's take Caesar being the emperor of Rome. So do we say that maybe he wasn't? Would anybody think that he wasn't? I mean, let's say we had no pictures, there's no cameras. And even if you had cameras, who says that's true? But we only have one story. We only have one history of Caesar at that time, at that location, and how many people lived there, and events that took place. And we say it's true because it would be impossible for people to have a mass conspiracy and say, just change history. Meaning, let's say it was really a guy named Tom. He was really the emperor of Rome. But then the whole world decides, no, we're going to say it was Caesar, and that's what we're going to teach our kids. So would we say that's tenable, that the entire world is going to be motivated with the same motive to lie? Let's go to a baseball stadium. You have a Subway Series. Yankees are playing the Mets.
Okay.
Let's say the Yankees really won. And there's 70,000 people there. And I get to the game late. So I asked the first person leaving the stadium after the game's over, who won? He says, Yankees. Now, I wouldn't bet $1,000 that he's telling me the truth. It's one person. But let's say I ask all 70,000 people. Every person says the Yankees. So then I would believe it, because you can't get 70,000 people to have a common motive to lie. You just don't get it. That's what we said. Caesar was the emperor. You're not going to get a common motive. So when you have masses at any event, that removes any type of fabrication. People are not going to have a group lie. Mass conspiracy is impossible. That's what we know. World War I, World War II, the Civil War, all these events. There's only one record of it too. If that wasn't true, if there was no Civil War, so where is the true history that took place back then? If there was no World War I, so where is the true history? But you see, if you only have one record and it's masses that attest to it, you know for a fact it took place. But the other possibility that a story could be false is, well, maybe people were ignorant about what they saw. So would you say that people were ignorant as to what date and who John F. Kennedy was in 1961 when he was shot in Texas?
63.
It's such a 63. So it was such a simple matter of fact. We know the state, we know the year, we know who it was, John F. Kennedy. There was no misconception. There were no communications that were off because the data was easily observable. So if you have easy observable information, we know who Caesar was, we know the city. So if we have, that's easy. Everybody can understand that. So when we have those two ingredients, when it's simple phenomena that anybody can identify, and when you have masses at an event, so then we know that the event had to take place. And that's exactly what God did at Sinai. We have a singular history. There's no secondary story what the Jews were doing in year 2448. Right? So 33...
Were there witnesses, Rabbi Moishe?
That's the transmission we have today. We have a transmission from every Jew.
Were there witnesses that we received the Torah
Yes.
and God's commandments? Where are the witnesses? Who are the witnesses?
Yes, that's exactly what Moses tells the people 8 times in Deuteronomy. He tells the people, don't forget what your eyes saw. And all the people, those 2.5 million, transmitted it. And we also have names of families, and we have the travels in the deserts. We have the names of the tribes. So it's not just, a simple story. We have exact detail, who the sons of who, and at that event, and how many people were there, and what exactly they saw. And then we have the entire world today reaching us a singular, identical story that they were all at this mountain, and that they heard God's voice coming out of this flaming inferno mountain. And everybody in the world attests this, not only Jews, Christians, Muslims, they all attest to this being exactly what took place. So there's no way this story could have been fabricated if it didn't take place. It would be impossible. It would be impossible to get the story. Imagine I tell you, I was on the George Washington Bridge today at 12 noon, broad daylight, and then there's other people with me. The spaceship came down and gave me these tablets, and I go to the news and I tell the news, there must have been 200,000 people, traffic stopped, and they all saw me get these tablets. So you know the first thing the news station is going to ask me? Where are those witnesses that you're claiming as part of your story?
Exactly.
Here's those witnesses. That story is going to die right there. It will not be a major religion 3,000 years later. The only way that it will travel through time is if the people did see me, if there was a spaceship, and it really did take place. If it did take place, if Moses did not, if the people were not there with Moses at Mount Sinai, so he would have a challenge. He would be going to people in the middle of the desert saying, you were with me on this mountain, and you saw this fiery mountain, and then there were 2 million people with us, and you heard God's voice coming out of the mountain. Now, if it didn't take place, you think anybody's going to take Moses seriously? If it did not take place, Moses would not get that story off the ground. Just like World War II, just like Caesar. But by the fact that you have a unanimously held, transmitted story in our possession, I'm not talking about writing. You don't prove a book from a book. You prove the book from their verbal transmission. And that's what we have. The entire world attests this is the history of the Jews. It had to have happened. That's the proof. The same proof we use to prove any historical event. Now we know that God actually gave a system only once in history. You don't have this in any other religion. All the other religions of blind faith, and even in the Gospels in Christianity, there are 4 different versions of events. They can't get the story straight. That shows you the events they're trying to spread are not true. You only have truth when it's unanimous and identical. And no other religion has this. None. And it makes sense also that there should only be one religion, because there's only one human being. We're all the same. Everybody gets cancer, whether you're an Eskimo or a Jew, an Asian, or if you're from Egypt. You get cancer, you're going to be treated the same exact way because we have identical bodies.
Yeah.
Psychologically and philosophically, we have the same minds. Everybody prefers happiness over sadness. Yeah. Everybody prefers to have more wealth than less. So we're all the same identically. So what's this idea of having multiple religions? You only have one human being.
Well, when you mentioned that, it sparked something inside of me, because I believe that religion around the world causes conflict and problems, because we're Jewish, and then they're Christians, and then they're Muslims, and they're Protestants, and they're, and I believe that if all the rabbis, the priests, the ministers, the imams, they all got together and they said, you know what, let's create one universal religion for everybody. Who's to say which religion is the best? So maybe we take the best little bits and pieces of all religions and make it into one. And all human beings on planet Earth would now be one religion. We're one race, one human beings. I believe by doing this, that we would eliminate probably 90% of all the problems and the conflicts that goes on around the world. Anti-Semitism would cease to exist, and there would be no racism because we would all be the same.
I have a better idea. Instead of relying
that's your idea.
Instead of relying on human beings to come up with a religion, why don't we rely on the creator of human beings? And that's what we're doing with Judaism. You only have one history of God ever having divine revelation to a people and giving a law. You don't have this any other claim. There's no claim that stands up to the test of what is viable, what is the basis for accepting a historical account. No other religion has it, because God gave only one system, and he gave it for all people. In the Torah itself, we are supposed to be examples for all of the people. And it's our wish that, just like Abraham, who was raised as an idolater and served idols, used his mind to extricate himself from that flawed culture, and realized after 40 years of pondering proofs of God, and he amassed, like Maimonides talks about, tens of thousands of followers, because he was speaking ideas that made sense to the mind, which is what Judaism is. If people would study it, they would see. If they would look at Judaism, they would see that there's no such thing as racism. Look at all Moses married a black woman. Joseph married an Egyptian. And you have this throughout time. King Solomon also married an Egyptian, and many others. So there's no such favoritism in God's eyes. Everybody is human. Everybody comes from Adam and Eve. We're all identical. The color of your skin, the type of hair you have, your height.
I'm still looking for my Eve.
Okay. So I hope soon you should find her.
Yeah. But you know what? I think us Jews, what we do better than anybody else, and we talked about it earlier in our brief discussion, is Tikkun Olam.
Tikkun Olam.
And my definition of Tikkun Olam, and I wrote it down. It means in Jewish teachings any activity that improves the world, bringing it closer to the harmonious state for which it was created. Tikkun Olam implies that while the world is innately good, its creator purposely left room for us to improve upon his work. And performing Tikkun Olam is doing the most Jewish thing there is. And I'll add that part of my purpose in creating the Jewish Humor Group is my form of Tikkun Olam in bringing people together in fun and laughter. And for the most part, it's worked. It's worked out that way.
Yeah,
and you want to expand on Tikkun Olam, or do you more or less agree with what I just said?
I agree. I mean, the term Tikkun Olam is something which the rabbis refer to in a couple of cases. It's primarily to have harmony. One case of Tikkun Olam they talk about is where they, according to the Jewish law, all loans are forgiven after 6 years when Shemitah comes. So in that case, a lot of people would not lend people who really need money because they're afraid they won't get the money back. So the rabbis set up something called a prusbul, which allows them to still get the money back even after the 6 year cycle, the 7 year cycle. And that was done for Tikkun Olam. That was done in order to allow people who have need to be able to borrow, and the lenders would not feel there's any risk. That's one form of Tikkun Olam. Another Tikkun Olam was that if Jews are held captive, that you should not pay exorbitant ransoms, because what that will do, it'll incite more captors, because then the nations that are our enemies will see how Jews pay out so much money to save a life. They'll start kidnapping more and more Jews. So they said for Tikkun Olam, to stop, to put to curb the amount of, like they said they had in Israel, they had Jews were being kidnapped and held for ransom. And if you would pay exorbitant amounts, then they would start doing that more and more. So they said, Tikkun Olam, don't pay high ransoms. This was the rabbis, talked about that. They also talked about divorces that should be done where there's they shouldn't be done in faraway cities where you don't know for sure if a woman is divorced or not, because if she's still married and then she marries somebody else, the child then becomes a mamzer, which means that he can't really marry most other Jews. So at Tikkun Olam, they want to make sure that divorces were done in a certain proximity, I think near the wife. So that's where the term Tikkun Olam is used, in order that financially, in terms of saving lives, in terms of the family units, we should try to ensure that it's as good as possible. But what you're saying is definitely true. We now use the term more loosely. Tikkun olam is to create as much harmony and peace, but there's a goal. I mean, again, you have to go back to what's God's plan by making human beings. And he made us different than everything else that he created on earth, and that is we have intelligence. He wants us to enjoy pursuing wisdom and learning more about his will, because that gives man the greatest enjoyment in life. The rabbis, they would work just a few hours a day and learn the rest of the day because the joy they got from it. Unfortunately, things flip-flop over the centuries, over the millennia, and now greed, fame, money, and all the lusts have become the drive of most cultures. And the driving force is the most fanciest car, the biggest home, and the greatest position, as opposed to what God's will is that earn what you need. Don't starve. Have clothing that are comfortable. Have a house that is insulated, that keeps you warm. Raise your family. Have food for them. But the goal should be that now use your time, maximize your time, in terms of what's going to give you the greatest satisfaction in life.
I have a question. Does Tikkun Olam? You have a question from someone. Does Tikkun Olam ever mean consideration or kindness or care for people who want to destroy us?
No. The rabbis say just the opposite. If somebody comes to kill you, you rise up earlier and you kill him first. Your life preservation is what God wants. Every law is broken when it comes to life, even the Sabbath. So it's crazy to placate enemies that are going to hurt you. No, if somebody you know is clearly going to come out and kill you, you rise up first and you protect your life. This is again,
so protect your life above Allah.
That's right. I mean,
that makes sense.
And again, this is a concept that comes from the other cultures. Unfortunately, Jews throughout the world.
The main purpose of the Jews is to.
Excuse me?
The main purpose of the Jewish Times really is to inform Jewish people what Judaism really is, how it works, and what are the benefits of learning all this. I mean, to expand on that a little bit.
Well, the benefits, again, going back to why we're here. What is God's will in creating man? We don't ask why God did it. Why is a motive. Motive is a human element. We don't attribute motive to God. We don't know what God is. We know what he did. We know he created man different than every other creature, and he gave us intelligence. That's the difference. So he wants us to use the intelligence, evidently. He made many people. That means he wants equality, that we all have a fair shake at life. That means that there's morality, there's justice, that we care for everybody. And we don't just care for another Jew, we care for everybody. Again, God did not create Jew and non-Jew. He created man and woman. What happened was man started inventing the religions. That's why after 2,500 years,
it's hard to...
Excuse me?
I was going to say that it's hard to care for human beings that, like, for example, in Israel, what goes on with the terrorists, with the Palestinians and Hamas, who were looking to destroy, Israel and kill as many Jews as they want, and you have all this anti-Semitism. I mean, I heard the other day that in New York, they stopped it, but they had the people who wanted to go and kill Jews. I don't know, was it in a synagogue or something? You hear it all the time. I mean, every day there's
Let me answer your first question. You want to know about
anti-Semitism. How does a Jew who believes feel about all these Jew haters and anti-Semitism and these terrorists that want to destroy the Jewish people of Israel and want to destroy Israel? How are we supposed to feel about all that?
Well, let me answer your first question. You were asking about what is the goal with the Jewish Times, which is what I was.
Yeah.
The goal is to give people access to finding out what authentic Judaism is. And then, what that will do is imbue people with a real appreciation for the Creator in terms of the amount of wisdom that is in the Torah. And that would give a person the greatest joy in life. Like I said, intelligence is the one difference that we have over all other creation. God gave it to us. He wants us to use intelligence because that will give us the most enjoyable life. So the Jewish Times endeavors over these 25 years to present insights into all walks of life, every aspect of life, but all the laws, from kosher to why you wear tefillin, or tzitzis, or prayer, or the holidays, and to show there's such a depth of ideas, of truths that you can uncover. And this is what the Jewish Time does. It presents the beauty of Judaism. It does not go into it completely dismisses a lot of the false beliefs, meaning Kabbalistic ideas, mysticism, things which are not found in God's words. These are things that people started adopting later on, just like Adam's grandson started doing star worship. That's not real. Stars cannot do anything but sit in the sky and give light. They have no power. There's no effect whether you're born in August or whether you're born at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. All these astrological beliefs are placating people's insecurities, as opposed to people should really mature and recognize what is really true. You want security in life, you use your intelligence, you plan. There is nature, there's natural law that you could work with. If you want to build a house that's secure, you don't make it out of cardboard. You find sturdy, durable wood, steel, and things that are waterproof. So if you use intelligence, you'll be able to protect yourself. Same thing with clothing. You eat foods that you know are healthy, not things that are going to kill you. So if you use your mind, you can have a very good life. And there is no mysticism in making money. There's no mysticism. You can just sit in your house and imagine the money's going to fall through your chimney. People don't really apply it when it comes down to the real needs. You'll see they don't really believe in these mystical ideas. And it's not in Torah. So again, this is another part of what I'm doing with the Jewish Times, is to expose falsehood and also to share that Judaism is the only one religion that's validated as being, has a source that has divine origin. No other religion has that. But the joy of the learning and the ideas is really, I hope, will bring people around to it, make them appreciate it. It's not restrictions. It's beautiful ideas that if you follow them and you look into the ideas behind all the laws, you'll be enamored by it. And I've seen so many people write in with that attitude once they started reading. And there's thousands of articles on Masorah and that you can search. Everything's free. So I'm hoping that people have that incentive to do that. Your second question about how do you feel about our enemies? Well, yeah. The rabbis say, somebody comes to kill you, you don't sit back and let them do it. You don't give them the other cheek like other religions say. You protect yourself, your family, your people, and if it means that you have to kill the person, that'll protect from him killing other people, that's what you do. Yeah. Because God has a system. He has answers to all these questions. Murderers get murdered. They get killed. The courts take them. The Jewish person that kills, that's it. He has to be killed. That's it. If there's a city of Jews that serves idolatry, more than half of them, you wipe out the entire city. So we are not treating ourselves with any favoritism over other people. If there is an idolatrous city of Jews, it's called Ir and Idachas. So if that city, if there's more than 50% of the people that are serving idolatry, the city is wiped out. Everybody. And all the money, everything is left untouched and burnt. And there is no favoritism. God made all people the same, and He wants the good for all people. And He writes in His Torah that we should be, a beacon to the other nations, that they should look at us keeping the Torah accurately, keeping observant Orthodox Judaism, the way God gave it to Moses, the way all the rabbis held Judaism is, not conservative, not reformed, not all the other extreme, the original form, which all the rabbis down the line through the Talmud, they had no dispute with what the Torah is, what Judaism is. If we keep that, not only will we enjoy it, the other nations are going to be very impressed. What a wise people they're going to say. That's a quote from Deuteronomy. This is what Moses tells them. This is the impression that you're going to give off to other people if we keep it properly. There's nothing in the Torah that goes against reason. Everything is, and again, I've been studying it and teaching for 45 years. And I am continually enamored by the new insights, just more and more layers you uncover. And you see how perfect this system is, because you're talking about the creator that made the system of Judaism. So it has to be perfect. So you're excited when next day you get up in the morning, you say your prayers, you have your coffee, and then you start your day and you open up the Torah and it's an exciting journey, and you're just waiting, you're anticipating, what am I going to find today? What new ideas? It's really exciting if a person can dedicate themselves to stop pulling away from the pursuits that we have in our culture, the fame and the money and all the lusts, and to give it a chance. You'll see. Because I've never spoken to any rabbi or seen any rabbi commentary that said anything less than the Torah is amazing. King David, King Solomon got amazing, miraculous knowledge overnight when he was 12. And he wrote Proverbs. And his father, King David, wrote Psalms. And in it, you see amazing appreciation. So look at the wisest people, how they lived, and what their attitude of the Torah is, as opposed to looking at people today who don't use their minds. They're just chasing, desires, seeing movies, watching TV, really wasting their lives. But then speak to people that have, you can respect, the greatest thinkers, prophets that God spoke to. That should validate who we take our lead from.
You just said a key word there, desire. Religion, like anything else, I think, especially if you're talking about Orthodox Judaism, for one to become an Orthodox Jew, from where I sit, it requires a great deal of effort, a great deal of work, from laying the tefillin, from following the whole commandments and the Torah, and keeping kosher, and it's almost like a full-time job. So desire, if human behavior works on, what they desire most in life. If they really desire this, then they'll follow it. If they feel that it is rewarding, I suppose, this is, what people act upon. What is the reward if I do this? What's not the reward if I don't do that? I, for myself, as I told you earlier, I consider myself a Jew at heart and identify, but I'm more of a secular Jew. But I wake up every morning and I ask myself two things. What am I going to do today that's going to be good for me? And what am I going to do good today that's going to be good for other people? And that's how I kind of live my life. Every day I look at how I can do things that can improve me or do something good for me and do something that's good for others. But to go ahead and follow the structure of the Orthodox Jew, again, it's desire. So for me, the desire is not there. Maybe if I go to your Jewish Times, maybe I'll change my mind. I don't know. I'll check it out.
I think you will.
But
you're right, desire. But you have to keep in mind that what's good for you, what's good for others, we already know that God is the one who created us, and He's the one that has the best answer to that. And He created human beings, and He gave a system that's going to be the best thing for us. So why don't we give it a chance and take a look? I know there's restrictions and so on, but the truth is, in a given amount of time of the day, so you sleep 8 hours, all right? So you got another 16 hours during the day, a few hours for prayer, you have work, you could work a few hours a day, and then you have a good amount of time where you can start pursuing these questions. What exactly is good for me? You do want the goodness for you. You want the good for you here, but you also want to have an eternal life too. That's another consideration. And what gives a person eternal life? So that should also be something which not where you're worried morbidly, when am I going to pass away? But you do in the back of your mind, realize what is the greatest good is that you have goodness for a longer span of time, a longer duration.
Yeah.
But the good has to be where we're starting here. And what is the greatest life that I can have here and others? So God gave us that answer. The pursuit of intelligence and studying the wisdom of the Torah is going to give a person more enjoyment. And it sounds strange because nowhere in the world do you have this. Not on TV, not on the internet. Where is anybody saying, the most fun you can have today is use your mind? It's not being said, but this is what Socrates and Aristotle and Plato and Einstein, you look through time, you find, and Sigmund Freud, they were completely absorbed in wisdom, whatever the branch was, because it's something which you could be involved in endlessly, and it opens up more and more doors. The Torah is written in that fashion, where one question leads to an answer, but then you see another question, and the answers are they're brilliant. I'll give you an example. I think maybe by example is the best way to illustrate what I'm saying, that wisdom, that type of an enjoyment. You ask a person wanted to keep kosher. Why did God give the law of kosher? So animals are edible and which are not. Now, if you look at most of the features, whether it's fins and scales on fish, whether it's split hoofs by mammals, whether it's multiple legs by insects that indicates that we're not to eat them, most of the indications of what makes something kosher or not is the way it moves, its mode of locomotion. Keep in mind also, there's no such kosher restriction by vegetation. You can eat any grain, any fruit, any vegetable. There's no restriction. Why is it? That's one big question. Why is it that kosher laws do not apply to vegetation? They only apply to animal life. And why is it that the indications of what's kosher have to do with how the thing moves? So when something moves as opposed to something else, we have a thing called identification. People don't have pets that are a cactus or a strawberry or a rock. People's pets are moving cats, dogs, things that have motion, things that have life, because they identify. Now, God made us that we do identify with other life, but there's a danger. Let's say we start identifying with life that is very disgusting. Something low to the ground, something creeps on its belly like a snake, a centipede, a spider, a lobster on the bottom of the ocean. If we start eating these things, what happens is we break down the disgust, which God wants us to have. He made the emotion of disgust for a reason. He wants us to maintain a certain wall between what's disgusting behavior between myself and my fellow and what's acceptable behavior. But if I start breaking down that wall and everything goes, and how do I break down that wall of disgust? There's no such thing as what foods I can't eat. I'll eat the most disgusting things. What happens is you start identifying with very disgusting creatures, and then your whole personality gets changed, that you don't have a sense of disgust. And then your behavior in other areas, you'll start cheating in business. You'll start being lewd in terms of sexual relations. Because once an emotion opens up in one area, it spills over to other areas too. That's why when the Jews committed the sin of the idolatry with the gold calf, they started being involved in promiscuity as well, it says. Because once they let loose the reins of one emotion of idolatry, then all the other emotions, which like a floodgates, just opened up. So God gave kosher because he wants there to be a restriction on our behavior. And how do you restrict your behavior? What you eat. Don't eat things that are very disgusting, and you'll remove your feeling of disgust. Maintain a certain amount of a wall between you and disgusting creatures, and you'll keep that feeling of abhorrence to other behaviors in life you will not indulge in because you're maintaining a retaining wall. So it ends up, these indications about kosher have to do with the way things move, the legs, the fins, the hooks, to show you that it's because these things are animate. That's just how they move, because this is what makes them animate. And animate things are what you identify with. But there's no risk of eating any fruit. Fruits are not alive. So you can eat anything. There's no identification with the fruits.
All fruits and vegetables are kosher then?
Everything. Anywhere. Any vegetation you can eat. There's no restriction on it, because there's no danger of identifying with something which is inanimate.
Right.
You see, in God's words themselves is a beautiful clue. All the signs, but he doesn't say why. He leaves the fun part to us. You start exploring, you start making associations, and you start seeing patterns. And this was just one beautiful idea. And now you see an insight to what kosher is about. But it's right there in God's words. It's not about health. It's not about, other things people want to make up. Just look at what God says. And this is the way the Torah operates in all areas. You can look into all areas. You'll start seeing clues as to what's going on. It's amazing. When God relates to people, we just read, each Saturday we go to temple and we read a section of the Torah. So we just finished reading yesterday about Jacob and Esau when they were born. And it says that Esau was born covered with hair. And Jacob was born grabbing onto his brother's heel. They were twins. And it doesn't tell us anything more. So why is God doing this? Why is God creating one child completely with hair? Another one has got his hand on the heel. And that's it. So now
I could use some hair.
So there's a reason for this. Because later on, Rebecca would use Esau's hairy exterior to get the blessings. Jacob would have to put on goat skins to go before his father who was blind. And now he was able to convince his father, I'm the more worthy son. Give me the blessings of Abraham. Give me the blessings. So this way I could lead the Jewish people. Esau, on the other hand, his father was blind and he didn't know that he was out murdering. It was adultery and he was doing idolatry. His father was blind. He wasn't aware of that. Rivka knew this. The mother knew this. So God gave at birth certain elements that can help Rivka plan out a strategy to achieve God's goal, that the proper son carries on the teachings of Abraham. So again, this is just another example of how there are clues in the Torah, beautiful stories, and you could spend your life going through it and you're just enamored. I mean, it's never a dull moment. It's exciting. and it gives you more pleasure. There's only so much money you need. How much do you have to work? I mean, I know people that have plenty of money and they're still working every day because this is the way the society is. You can stop, retire at a certain point, and really get involved in what God wants for us.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can a Jew be spiritual without being religious?
Well, you can't follow God's will without being religious. Now, being spiritual is something, I would explain that to me, that you're being involved in your soul's perfection and helping other people perfect their soul. But you can't do that without God's wisdom, without God's Torah. I would say, no, you can't be spiritual if you're not following God's Torah. Then you're just coming up with your own ideas about what spiritualism is. That's not what God said. If we want to really be, following God as He wants us to perfect ourselves, He gave us a very clear system how to do it. And before you said, you want to do what you desire during the day, and your desires take you away from wanting to be restricted by, all the laws. But the truth is, there's not many laws you have to do during the day. There's plenty of free time. And when like in prayer, so it's a half an hour in the morning, and then it's 10 minutes later on in the day for afternoon and evening. And then, but in the prayers themselves is beautiful ideas, giving you ideas about how to relate to other people. So you want to help people out? Adam, look at what King Solomon and King David said. That's what we read in the morning, Psalms. That's, comprises, most of what we're saying in the morning is King David's words. And you'll see beautiful insights into how you can be better for yourself and how to treat other people, and also, how to relate to God and what to value in life. What values in life are going to give you happiness? God will tell you the answer better than any human being.
So you connect with God through religion, through Torah, and through the Jewish times, and you want the people to see the light and see the beauty of the Jewish religion and the definition of Judaism. And really, that seems to be your life's mission and life's purpose. Am I right?
That's right. And it's very, very gratifying. And I'm glad that you gave me this opportunity. You have a few 100,000 followers. And I'm hoping that we reach a couple of people and they also start taking a look and start reading more. And again, the site is out there. It's Mesora, MESORA.org. The Jewish Times is on the site.
Yeah, we'll put a link there.
Good. But this is the best thing for a person. It's like, you want to know what to do for your body. You don't self-administer medication. You go to a doctor that's got 20, 30 years experience. So if you want to know, not the body, but you want to know your own soul, your own happiness in life, who are you going to go to determine how can I be happy? God mapped out exactly what is going to give a person happiness. It's, I think a person should really stop, thinking it's all restriction. It's not. Because when you see the ideas, you want to do it. I want to keep Shabbos. I want a guy in the street who's driving his car to say, hey, I see a lot of Jews in this area dressing in suits on Saturday. What's going on? There's the opportunity, like Maimonides says, to share the ideas of God's Torah with everybody else. It's not just for Jews. It's for every human being. That's what the prophets talk about. In the future, the rest of the nations are going to recognize that they inherited fallacy, as Jeremiah. In the future, this is what the other nations are going to say. They're going to realize. A lot of Christians right now are abandoning it because it doesn't make sense. They just realize it's just not consistent with reason. God is three. He's one. What does that mean? And then what's all the gospels that are conflicting with each other? If you want to know what's true, it has to jive with reality. That's what the word true means. It complies with reality. Reality is the natural world and how a human being is philosophically and psychologically. If something jives with that, then the idea is true. If something is causing conflict and your mind can't grasp 3 and 1 being the same thing, throw it out. 3 is not 1. It's impossible. You can't make sense out of that. Everything in Judaism, you're not going to find a thing that conflicts with reason. You're not going to find anything which demands blind faith. Everything is based, like we discussed, on proof, on reason, on events.
You said a key word before that resonated with me. That was happiness. And being happy. I think all human beings, you, me, everyone, we all strive to be happy in life. My own definition of happiness is as follows. Happiness to me, what I consider happiness, is an abundance of health in three major categories.
Mhm.
And I would say the first category would be physical health. It's all about health to me. Happiness equals health. So physical health, because when you're not healthy, how can you be a happy person? If you got cancer, if you got the arthritis, you got heart disease, you got pains, and how can a person be happy with living with physical pain? So definitely being physically healthy has got to be a major contributor to happiness. Second, I would say, is emotional health. I mean, if you're not healthy in the brain and the mind here, and you're a little sedrate, and you got this, messed up ideas about life, and you're unhappy, you're sad, you're not an emotionally stable person. So you got to be an emotionally stable and an abundance of emotional health. And the third, and you spoke about it a few times about money and about this and that. Listen, we live in a world that's a materialistic world, and without money, you're not going too far. So obviously, a person who has obtained an abundance of financial health and wealth is going to live a better quality of life than a person who is not. So if a person has an abundance of physical health, emotional health, and financial health, and of course, I'll add to it that they have love in their life, because as human beings, I think we're all in need of love. People want to be loved. You want to love people. You want to feel loved by other people. If you have all of those ingredients going on, then how can you not be a happy person? And you can add your own definition, but that's my definition of what a happy person is and happiness is.
Well, I would say you need to have that, because that'll be the platform. That'll be the substratum from which you can be happy. But those things themselves will not give you happiness. Once you have health and you have your finances taken care of, and psychologically you are okay, there still has to be a use of your energies. And that's what the book Koheles, Ecclesiastes, that King Solomon wrote. And we read it every Sukkot holiday. It's how do you achieve happiness? Now, if you look at it, it's about 13 chapters, and he goes through different experiments he did on himself. And again, he received God's wisdom miraculously overnight at 12 years old. King David, his father, was 70 when he passed. King Solomon was now 12. He took the throne, and God came to him in a vision and asked what I should give to you, Solomon. So he asked for wisdom to judge the people. So God gave him miraculous wisdom overnight. And the people came from all parts of the world, the Queen of Sheba. And she says, after she spoke to him, half of your greatness I have not heard about. Because now that I see you and I hear your wisdom, I'm completely floored. So he wrote this book, Koheles, Ecclesiastes, and it's a book about what gives you happiness. And he experiments with wine, with giddiness, with wealth, with servants, with beautiful homes and gardens and streams. And he goes through every single assumed physical type of pursuit, and he shows what the problems are with each. And then he talks about the problems that people have and the concerns. Like, for example, one party says, a person will say, I have my wealth, but I'm going to leave it over to a son, and I don't know if he's going to use it properly or not. So King Solomon says, this is a foolish thing to worry about. First of all, you're not going to be around when you leave your money over. That's after you pass away, right? And so that's not something to have a concern about. People have certain concerns in life which are not necessarily going to come into reality. So they're worrying about something which may not even exist. He may have a wise son, but people worry about things. And King Solomon goes through all these different things. So you're going to get wisdom from the greatest minds. And this is a mind that God, it's the only time in history God imbued a person with miraculous wisdom. So and this book is also on my site. Rabbi Chaim went through, and it's on the books page. You can go there and you can see, you can download it. It's free. Everything is free on the site. Read through it. So to be happy, it's not going to be just because you have your physical health and you have money and psychologically okay. Because now you have to understand, how does human psyche work? There's tremendous energies. They flow. And the book starts off, King Solomon. He uses a metaphor. The rivers are flowing and they gather to one spot. And from that spot, they flow further. What is he saying? Rabbi Chaim explained beautifully. Man's energy, his libido, is constant. It's never yielding. He'll go towards one pursuit. He'll get it. But then he's frustrated. He used it. He's done. Now he has to go look for something else. He's constantly looking for happiness. So if you do that in the physical world, you'll reach something, but how long is that dinner where you got honored going to last? It's a 4-hour dinner. That's it. And that place is not going to honor you again for at least another 20 years. Now, what do you do in between? If you're living for that fame, then you're living for something which is very transient, temporary, and it loses its pleasure. Yeah, you feel good in front of an audience for an hour while you're delivering your speech, but you can't live for that. I have a lot of money. I buy every single toy I want. Now what? I bought everything. I've traveled to every great place. Now what? These type of pursuits are imaginary. So he explains, where do you really get enjoyment in life? When you're pursuing wisdom, just like I said earlier, the greatest minds, the Einsteins, the Platos, the Socrates, they were the most happiest people because they were involved in study. And God gave us this great gift of the Torah. We can see it all spread out like a set table, all these beautiful concepts, the laws, the examples of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, what their perfections were. We can appreciate why they acted a certain way, how they spoke to certain people. That pursuit, there's no physical tiredness. You can keep going all day in study, and that gives you the happiness. So yes, it'll be hard to do that if you're in pain physically, so take care of your health. It's hard to do that if you don't have a home, so have some work so you can have a place to live. It doesn't have to be a mansion. I mean, if you want to spend your life working 9 in the morning to 9 at night, so everybody can go, ooh and ah, what a beautiful house you've got. Nicest house on the block. So now you're working to impress people. You're not working for your happiness. So this book, Koheles, which is written by a prophet, and it's coming straight from God, that means that the ideas are all absolutely true. That's where you're going to find happiness. Read what the wisest people have written about.
Okay, we're moving up to almost an hour and 55 minutes into our talk.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up. Why don't we post a link to your here? Can I put a link here? That doesn't seem that I can. Can't post comments to Facebook groups. Learn more. All right, we'll post it below. This interview is being recorded, so for anybody who's here or who's missed it, it'll be put on the group, and people can see it and review it. And Rabbi also send you the recording so you can upload it to YouTube or do whatever you like with it. So that could be useful.
Thank you.
Do you have any final closing words for us?
I would say I urge people to go to Masorah, go to the website, start subscribing to the Jewish Times. It's free, and send in your questions. Every question is reviewed, and you get a personal response. So if there's concerns that you have, it could be personal matters in life. Hopefully, you'll have the ability to write in, to take the time, ask questions about different parts of the Torah, just like Adam was doing, in terms of how do we relate to people that are out to kill us? What do we do? What did the rabbi say? What does God say? Again, God is the authority. If we just leave it up to man, that's why there's a debate whether you could do abortion or not, because you don't know when life starts. So we can't determine when you're killing or when you're it's just, it's like the rabbis say, a day after a woman conceives, it's just water. So if she takes a morning after pill, you're not killing a life form. But you need God to be the one that's telling you when it's considered. Let's say there's a baby, again, a woman's giving birth to a baby, and now her heart pressure is going down, her blood pressure is going down. The baby's really putting a risk at her life. What do? Do we abandon the baby to save the mother? How do you make that decision? Which life is more, takes priority? So that's what we have the Torah for, to tell us. Until the baby comes out of the mother, it's still a dependent life. So it's not an independent life yet. It's a lower level existence. The mother has independence. She's breathing on her own her whole life already. But once the baby's head comes out and it's breathing, now they're on equal footing. You can't kill the baby at that point to save the mother. It's only until it comes out. But you need principles that come from God to determine what's life. It doesn't come from us. We can't make that determination. So again, in so many areas, we fall short. We need God's authority to tell us, in terms of stealing, what should be paid back if somebody steals? If there was embarrassment involved, does that mitigate what the person owes? Yes. If a person went through embarrassment when he was stealing something, he pays less. Interesting. But these are all beautiful ideas. If somebody I have collateral because I loaned some money to somebody, and now this is his only shirt, I have to return it to him during the day. If I took his pajamas as collateral, I've got to return him his clothing that he wears at night. I can't. I have to have a sensitivity, which I would not come up with on my own, but God's Torah tells us there's a certain decency that a human being must have towards others in all areas. And these are just small examples and just the tip of the iceberg of these different areas of law. But once you start seeing and you appreciate, then you start learning what real morality is, what decency is, what is considered life, what's not considered life. Why is the Sabbath so important? All these areas, they're amazing. I really urge people to use the site, send questions in. There's plenty of information.
Who answers the questions?
I do.
You do, okay. All right, look, it was a real pleasure speaking with you and learning about the Jewish Times. I hope that some of our members of my Jewish Humor Group will check it out. I'll definitely check it out, see what it's all about.
Good.
And I wish you continued success in your endeavors and in your life purpose, which is, a life of meaning, of good purpose. Definitely a good thing that you're doing.
Thank you.
So I honor you for that. And continue success and muzzle in life and everything you do.
You too. You too. Pleasure.
All right. Pleasure's all mine. So thank you. And we'll wrap it up here. As I said, this will be on replay for the group so they can view it afterwards. And I'll send you the video.
Thank you so much, Anna.
All right. Have a good night,
You
everybody.
too. I'll speak to you soon.